10, 15 years ago.
LAMBDAs, dynamic arrays.
Huge amount of potential in the stuff we're doing. There's a dangerous point that just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Ian Bennett delivered one of my favourite talks at the Global Excel Summit 2024. Now, Ian is a partner at PwC Australia. He's somebody that's very well known and very highly regarded in the financial modelling industry. And what I loved about his talk was that he did two things at the same time. He reinforced the message of the importance of best practice standards. Keep things simple, keep them consistent. In your models, make sure everything is well structured. Think about your end client, and he made the point that your client isn't always an external person or team. It could be somebody internal that really is your client, because you have a responsibility to give them the information they need. But at the same time, you can see that he's thinking about the future of the modeling industry. So he's thinking about how newer Excel features like LET, LAMBDA, dynamic arrays will affect financial modelers in the next few years, probably, maybe less. So here is my talk with Ian Bennett. Hope you enjoy it. Right. Ian Bennett, thank you so much for stopping by. I know you've got flights and to catch and things to do, but I really wanted to start by saying thank you so much for confirming the 40% figure, 40% of time spent on your team's scoping models before you even start building. I heard you talk about that maybe 5-6 years ago, so I'm guessing
probably more,
it's still
probably
the same.
10, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
and it has always been the same. So that methodology that we've been following was probably set in place 20 odd years ago. And you're right, around about 40% before we start building. So that covers the scoping phase, it covers the specification phase and the design phase. But that idea that you're not going to build until you have removed the ambiguity from the model and the specification, is a real pillar to the way that we build models.
There were so many parts of your talk in particular I just found myself nodding kind of vigorously to. I know we're in a world of LAMBDAs, dynamic arrays, but I felt like you were really still focusing people's minds back on the keep it simple, like get the fundamentals right. Is that still where your head is at with all of this kind of new stuff coming into Excel?
Probably not. I actually think that a lot of those newer functions that come in have huge amount of potential in the stuff we're doing with our clients, and they will be embraced.
Yeah.
I think there's a trade-off to be done between transparency and ease of use and functionality, and that sometimes is quite tricky, but we've seen instances in the past in Excel where that trade-off has happened very quickly and probably when we weren't expecting it. And I'm bullish that that'll happen here too. That when people see the benefits of these things, they'll actually get adopted relatively quickly. So yeah, we are dependent on the market to embrace them, to be comfortable with them. There's a lot of trust required, but at the same time, I actually think they'll be adopted a lot sooner than all of us think. I don't think that changes, though, the fundamentals. So when you go back to the fact that you're building a model for somebody that they are going to use, to trust, it could be a really important part of their day or their week or their month as to whether it works and produces the right answers. That is a very human endeavor. It's probably the thing I love most about my profession. And so those things we still have to remember. We have to take people on a journey. We have to understand their hopes and fears before we start any project. But when we deploy our skills, when we produce brilliant models, I think we'll be using the LAMBDAs much sooner than we think.
And have you been dipping personally into the sort of LAMBDA territory yourself? Because, for most Excel geeks, whether you use it commercially, it's quite exciting, all this new stuff that you can do in Excel, isn't it?
Yeah, so you probably got it for 3 different reasons. So there's a curiosity piece. And I think there's no good professional modeler out there that doesn't have a huge sense of curiosity. So immediately you're drawn to these things. You kind of want to know what they do and try and understand them a bit more. So I found myself in that category. I think there's also the desire to just stay a little bit ahead of the curve and know what's the potential here. So you can't really have a sensible conversation unless you've really sort of looked into that. And it might be something that we share amongst the team, and maybe someone goes deep into one area, someone goes deep into another, but I think we're sharing that sort of common knowledge of the potential. But then the real important one is, okay, how am I going to actually apply this to a client situation? How are they going to embrace it? How's it going to make their life easier? So you have to stay at that sort of is it the cutting the bleeding edge? I don't know. There's a dangerous point that just because you can doesn't mean you should, and I'm sure we all sort of find ourselves in that territory sometimes, but certainly having a solid understanding of the potential of all of these new tools is really important.
Yeah, I guess even if it's just to rule them out for certain situations, if you don't know what a LAMBDA does, how on earth can you rule it out? But you also touched really nicely on the importance of the client or whoever, the stakeholder, even if it's a better technical solution, potentially the client might just say, no, I don't understand it. So I thought that was a really good point, that even if we technically as modelers like, hey, look, this is the cutting edge thing, sometimes it's still not the right thing for the client.
And they're right.
Yeah.
Like if that's their decision, they're 100% right, and you've absolutely got to not just accept it, you've got to embrace that. And you probably got it wrong in the first place by designing something that had that in it. But on the journey, you can say, look, we've probably got a couple of options here, and do you know what? One of them might be one of the most technical things you've ever seen.
Yes.
But I think it's going to work here in a way that could really bring a lot of value. And if they're like, nah, then all good. But if they're ready to go on that journey with you, then hell, let's go.
Which goes back to your point of 40%, you don't rush that initial phase, the conversations you have. I loved what you said just about reading people as well, like being in those moments one-to-one or one-to-many where you're actually just seeing how somebody reacts and then thinking, okay, we can push here or we can back off.
That's exactly right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Obviously, the conference sort of title is about AI. Was there anything else for you that has stood out from what you've seen today, really?
So I'm on a panel tomorrow where we'll talk a little bit more about AI. So I'm very bullish about the potential of AI. I think when you start to think about how it can be broken down into all the different components of the professional of a financial modeler and think about what that means from a day-to-day job, I think you start to get really excited, right? And so there's a huge number of people that are still in the camp of AI equals losing my job, so I'm not even going to think about it. But once you start to show a bit of curiosity and then apply it to what we do on a daily basis, then there's potential.
Nice. Do you see that in something like reviewing, like maybe more quickly than other areas? I guess in my head, AI reviewing models feels like an obvious go-to that could be done quite quickly.
So it's going to apply to scope, to specify, to design. It's going to apply to the build phase, which is where most people go, but I'm less interested in that at the moment. And then it's going to go to that review phase, and it's going to be part of how we hand over models. So yes, the review piece is important. I would love a Gen AI type tool to be telling me what it's found in the model. And when I look at a specific part of the model, I want it to tell me something about that specific part of the model, maybe something about the formula that I'm looking at, maybe the commercial logic that it's looking at, maybe whether it thinks that commercial logic is normal, usual, traditional, and then maybe whether it's right or wrong. But I'm happy for it to take me on that kind of journey. I'm not going to write a tool today that's going to go over an entire model and tell me if it works or doesn't work. We'll go on that journey of trying to apply it to all the different stages that we use on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it'll be a really interesting few years as things develop.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by. Good luck with the talk tomorrow. And yeah, it's nice to meet up in person.
Nice to meet you. See you.